Hello, this is Ivana.
This is Yaw.
And you're listening to the podcast Life in Black and White.
And all the shades in between.
We share all things life, relationships, marriage, parenting, race, and much more. If you enjoy listening to us, then please follow or subscribe to this podcast. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook under Life in Black and White. Hello, my friend. Welcome back to Life in Black and White and all the shades in between.
Hello. And I'm not a guest.
Sorry, I just said to Yao that he should say hello without me telling him to say hello, because then it sounds like he's a guest, so he's just being funny right now.
Okay.
I'm just thinking what we should talk about before we introduce our guests, because it's always about our cheer-ups and our kids and how annoying they are, but it's always, there's nothing else to say.
I don't think I've ever mentioned that our cherubs are annoying.
Okay, not directly maybe, but
I don't
between the lines.
I don't remember that at all.
Because we do these recordings, if you don't know that, my friend, we do them in the evenings, just right after we put our kids to bed, because that's the only time we have time. So that's why we have nothing else really to talk about, and anything that happened before we put them to bed, it's a blur. So there's nothing.
It's good to be here. It's good to be here. Right?
Yeah. But yeah, looks amazing today, I have to say, given it's 8 p.m. You look good.
Oh, thank you. I don't know what's going to come from that.
Nothing.
See,
you don't look at me like you're suspicious of something.
I'm worried. I
want a massage later.
Oh, okay. Now it's starting to, it's weighing up.
It's never selfless in my case. So, my friends, today we're talking to Dr. Melissa Cancel, who helps married couples like us experiencing conflict, which is us definitely, understand each other and communicate effectively. And we're very excited about this one because, I think like every married couple has something to learn and something to resolve. And although we might come across as a perfect couple,
that's funny. Yeah,
we're not. We have the same issues like any married couple. We argue, we annoy each other. Sometimes we want to leave.
Wow.
Or is it just me?
No.
Sorry. Oops.
Yeah.
But no, just joking. But like it's good to talk openly about these things, that it's nothing to be ashamed of, that we have issues we need to resolve. Because if you spend years with someone, of course it's not all a bed of roses. And that's why it's amazing we have people like Melissa who help us navigate all these problems, so to speak. Yeah, I don't know if it's problems, but
opportunities. Sorry, I know. Melissa's looking at me like, oh, really? You're one of those. Okay, don't worry. We'll talk.
She's shaking her head.
Yeah.
Okay, over to you, Melissa. Welcome, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be with you today. And I'm shaking my head, not because you're one of those, because you're reminding me of my husband.
He sounds like a really good guy. I like him already.
He is a really good guy, and he makes me laugh, which is one of my... So that's great. A sense of humor in marriage is really helpful.
Thank you.
Oh, I was going to ask, is it true? Because I'm not an expert, obviously, but I feel like humor really helps us to survive in tough moments. So I'm glad you mentioned that. So let's talk about you a bit more. Tell us about yourself, please.
Sure. Well, I've been married for 18 years. We have 6 kids, 5 grandkids, 1 on the way. And I have a PhD in communication. And I just recently started my business, which is called The Communication Doc. As you said, focusing on helping married couples to improve their communication so they can have less conflict and more satisfying marriages. The amount of divorces that happens very much saddens me. And I know that the reason that divorce happens is not always because of poor communication, but a lot of times it relates to that. So the number one reason why couples go to marital counseling is because of communication. I think it's like 69% of the time that's the big issue they claim. And a lot of times it's not necessarily that they have problems, that's the key problem, but that the problems they have, they don't know how to communicate about them to resolve them. So I believe that communication is the key. When you learn to communicate correctly in your marriage, whatever issues you're facing, you then know how to talk about them so that you can resolve them effectively and keep your marriage healthy, which is my goal.
Can I ask why communication at PhD level? What was it that made you decide to go in that direction?
It was a very circuitous route. I did an undergraduate degree in psychology, wanting to go in. And at the time, I took a course in interpersonal communication, which is all about communicating in relationships. And I loved how practical it was. So psychology deals with the mind, but how we know what's happening in the mind is through communication. And so I went and got my master's, excuse me, and my PhD, both in those. And for the past 30 years, I've been teaching college courses. But I decided recently that after 30 years of teaching, I really would like to target specifically helping married couples. And I'd like to do it in a format where I don't have to require you to read a textbook or take tests or quizzes or write papers to be able to learn how to do it.
Wow,
that's amazing. So my first question. So many. This is going to be a long episode, I think. We all know like men are from Mars, now women are from Venus. And I think this is the root cause of the majority of communication issues. Is that right?
I would say it is a large part of it. There can be other factors too. For example, if you come from a different culture, that can create issues communicating in different ways. Different backgrounds can come into play. But one of the things I talk about a lot is gender differences, because we not only think differently, but that the way we think differently causes us to communicate in very different ways. And some of those are biologically rooted in the fact that we're men and women, and some of those are socialized by how we're raised. But yes, they play a huge role, and that's why I spend time talking about it, because if you don't understand those differences, you're going to continue to be upset with your spouse for not doing things the way you think that he should, or vice versa, when it's really the issue. He's a man and you're a woman and you're different.
Can I just say, before we get to the gender differences, I'm so glad you mentioned that those cultural differences, because obviously me and Yaw, we come from different backgrounds. And I understand now, or it took me a while, just looking at me, Yaw, like, what is she going to say? No, but it took me years to actually understand that it can be a problem. You know, the differences in our upbringing, culture, background. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but say you have more temper, say, yeah. And to me, it's shouting, but he's not shouting, but I see this shouting as an example, yeah. Or I think he's too nice sometimes, too polite. And I'm not saying I'm not polite, but we're a bit different Slovakians. Yeah. We can come across as a bit that we have walls, but it's behind the walls, we are very, very most generous people. Yeah. So it's just those slight, differences, but they can cause a lot of arguments in our relationship. Yeah? When I tell Yaw that you're being too nice, you always think about other people, which is not a bad thing, but it can really drive me crazy. Yeah? So I'm glad you mentioned that. The key here is to acknowledge, these differences and try and see it from the other person's perspective.
Yes. And in fact, I'm sure you've heard of the golden rule, which is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Well, there's what has been called the platinum rule. So this is even better apparently than gold. And this rule says, do unto others as you think they would want you to do unto them. And so the difference there is the golden rule is still, from my perspective, I'm going to treat you like I would want to be treated. But if I come from a different cultural background than you, I'm still not taking into account that may not be how you want to be treated. So the rule focuses on the idea that I have to understand you and your culture so that I can treat you the way you would want to be treated.
I love that. So true, though. Huh?
Sorry, my brain is just ticking over and stuff.
You're thinking.
Yeah.
Tell us what you're thinking.
you guys. So.
No, that's really. I would like to think that most people, and I think you mentioned and stuff before, that after a period of time, maybe certain people get a little bit complacent on how we kind of speak our truths and say what we need to say, and maybe we park things that maybe at the beginning that you would turn around and just be more open about. I don't know. It depends how your journey of your relationship kind of work. But I like to think that when I'm communicating and stuff with my lovely, loving wife, that I do have that best interest and things. I am trying to think, not selfishly. I'm trying to get something across, but trying to still have her, the impacts of what I say to her, that matters to me. Does that make is that clear enough? Or is that as clear as mud?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And that is what we should be doing. The problem is that that's what a lot of people don't do in their marriages. I recently did a master class called 4 Thoughts That Will Destroy Your Marriage and How to Overcome Them. And these were very common thoughts that all of us in marriage have thought at one point or time. And all of them end up focusing my attention on me and the person. So, for example, one of them is my spouse isn't living up to my expectations. Well, what are your expectations? Are your expectations realistic for your spouse? Are you asking your spouse to do, are you expecting your spouse to do things that they really aren't capable of doing? Or are they realistic expectations that you've also communicated to your spouse so that your spouse knows that you can do this? And that is so common where things start to happen in a marriage and you start to have conflict, especially if it's not resolved. And then you start getting into that kind of thinking. Or another one that I covered was, I'm meeting my spouse's needs, but they're not meeting mine. Again, the focus being on me. And I think I'm doing everything for my husband, but he doesn't seem concerned about me. Right? So yes, you're right. The fact that you even brought that up and think that way is a sign that you guys probably have a pretty good, healthy relationship.
We're still together, so.
Yeah, so we'll see how it goes. We've still got a few years there. We've been together just like around 9, but like married. Sorry, I'm moving this mic around and
Still moving it.
It's annoying.
You don't need my expectations.
Maybe we need to communicate better, right?
Yes.
No, been together for 9, but yeah, married for 8.
But yeah, I think the fact we got together later in life, I was 31, something like that. You were 39. I think that helps because you're more experienced now. You know what you want. You know what you don't want. So I think that helped us to navigate things better, I think, than we would have, if we had got together earlier.
Because you at that age and me at that age were completely different. I was absolutely not in that frame of mind of that kind. Yeah, nowhere near. But yeah, sorry, we cut you off.
No, that's fine. I was saying I agree with that. I was not married until I was 34. So the same kind of thing applies. When you're younger, you tend to fall into that whole, happily ever after, I'm going to find the person I'm going to marry and it's going to be all great and marriage is wonderful. And marriage can be wonderful, but marriage is also really, really hard.
Yeah.
If you have, the older you are, the more you've lived, I think the more realistic you are, the more you've seen friends, family members be in relationships, you've talked with them and you see how it can be challenging. And so I do agree with you. One thing I try to do, and I encourage every couple I talk to that's considering marriage, I ask them, I want you to sit down and make a list of everything that's positive and everything that's negative about your spouse, and really sit and think, or your spouse to be, and really sit and think about all of the negatives. And then I want you to look at that list of negatives and ask yourself, if this never changes, can I stay married to this person?
Wow.
Yeah.
The answer is yes, get married. And if it's no. I did this with my spouse, and there are, one thing he does is he is a procrastinator. I am not. But I knew this when we got married. Whenever I get frustrated with him for procrastinating, I can't just say, well, you should change. You should stop procrastinating, because I knew that when I married him. And so I have no excuse. I chose to marry him.
Do you also find, though, in that journey, that balances yourselves as a unit, though? in terms of, if you're the action, I will do this, I'm going to go and do this. He kind of levels it out. It may be in a different way, but overall and stuff, yourselves as a unit kind of works better, because if you were both that way, and I'm not taking anything away from couples who are very go and very driven, very ambitious, and the time. But did you find that having him that way also kind of supported you in a way?
Yes, exactly. So there's two kind of theories of what attracts us to people. One of them would be the phrase "birds of a feather flock together," the idea of similarity, and the other one is opposites attract. And both are really true. Research studies have shown that when couples are more similar in certain aspects like values, beliefs, to a certain extent, attitudes, as well as some preferences, those types of things, that the more similar they are, they're likely to stay together longer and be more satisfied in their marriage. But where we find that the opposites attract comes into play is, like you're saying, with regard to personality or character traits, because then we complement each other. I am very structured. I call myself very boring. I think you can set a clock by me. And my husband is not. He is very spontaneous. He is very outgoing. He has never met a stranger. We laugh because even though I teach communication, I am very introverted, and I prefer to sit and watch people than to talk. So yes.
Amazing. I like
that. Yeah, I like that balance. I like it when people balance each other out and help each other grow. I think that's the purpose of a relationship, and that you grow in it. Because when you stop growing, that's...
If we stop growing and our relationship dies.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk about the importance of the truth in relationships. I don't know if I say it correctly or put it correctly, but Melissa mentioned something very, very interesting before we hit record. So let's talk about that.
So I'm actually working on a mini series that I'll be offering pretty soon to my clients, and the focus of it is on the truth in marriage. I'm not 100% sure about the title. It's probably going to be something like The Truth About Marriage and the Truth in Marriage. But the goal is to really focus on the importance of honoring the truth in your marriage. And I'm looking at this in three different aspects. One of them has to do with how we start our relationships, which is through self-disclosure. Self-disclosure is the idea that we intentionally have to share information about ourselves with other people in order for them to be able to get to know us. There are some things you can learn about a person just by watching them, but there's other information that if it's not intentionally shared, you would never know it. And that is how relationships grow from the start to intimacy. There's actually a theory that was developed in the 1970s called social penetration theory that talks about self-disclosure, and it uses the analogy of an onion. If you've ever seen the movie Shrek, Shrek describes himself as an onion, and how if you get to know him too much, you start peeling away all the layers and you get to the stinky, smelly core. That analogy is from that theory. And the idea is that as we peel away layers of ourselves by intentionally sharing information with others, you get to the parts of yourself that are more personal, more private, maybe even more smelly, the parts of who you really are, as opposed to parts that you just present to other people. And you have to do that to develop a relationship and get it to the point of intimacy. But we use the term escalation and de-escalation when it comes to relationships. So if you think of like an escalator, you're moving from the point where you first meet and you get aware of each other through various stages to the point of intimacy, which is the top of the escalator. But just like if you're on an escalator, if you just stand there and you don't keep moving, you're going to go back down. And so you have to keep working at keeping the intimacy in the relationship. And one way you do that is by continuing to share about yourself, the truth. It can be new things that you're learning. It can be things that are changing in you. I'm at the age now where I'm starting to go through menopause, and I'm having some changes like that. And there are some things I'm having to explain to my husband that are happening to me that I've never had to explain before. But if I didn't do that, he might think that there's something wrong with him, or there's some issues in our relationship that are really nothing other than that my hormones are going crazy. So you have to continue to share those truths as you grow. And the problem is we often don't do that. We get busy. We get busy in our lives. We get busy with our work. We get busy with our kids, busy with everything going on. Trials of life come into play, storms come into play. We recently went through Hurricane Milton, and I tell you, that was quite the experience. And I actually did a series of videos towards the end that were talking about how to help your marriage survive a hurricane. Because when those things happen, you're just like, are we going to evacuate or are we not going to evacuate? How are we going to prepare for the storm? How are we? And you forget the reason why you're doing this is for your family, for your loved ones, and you taking out your stress on them. And so, you have to keep communicating the truth, or your marriage is not going to stay.
It can be also used as a metaphor, how to survive a hurricane.
Yes, any storm.
It's like an analogy. It can be used as well, maybe.
I was agreeing with you. Yes, I came up with it. I actually called it, Hurricane Healthy Marriages is what I called the series. But yes, I was using it as an analogy for going literally through the hurricane, but also through other storms of life. Because intense storms are going to have the same impact on any marriage, where all of a sudden you go into survival mode, whether it be you have an extreme illness or a loss of a loved one or financial issues or a literal physical hurricane. You go into that survival mode and you forget about the people around you and making sure that you're still being concerned about them. And even simple things like just being kind, being thankful. I tried to make an intentional effort to thank my husband for the things that he was doing to ensure that we were safe during the hurricane. So simple things are important when you're in those. And that's really all you can focus on. When you're in the middle of those storms of life, the simple things are about all you can remember, but they're important. They're really important.
It must be. It must have a big impact. Just, like you said, the simple things I really feel do have the biggest impact, because you realise, actually, this is to the core of who you are, or who you've connected with, who you turn around and said, look, I want to spend the rest of my life. And if they're from the core, when you're going through like an extreme situation and they're turning around, and that to me is their truth, and they're saying like, thank you, but really thank you. That's from the heart. That's big. That's really.
As we were speaking about sharing the truth, I was thinking about you, because you too often in your head, and you don't share sometimes what's happening now in your mind. And can this be one of the things that people stop sharing or should share to continue growing? When something bothers you, you shouldn't feel like, I don't want to bother the other person. You should share everything, no? Yes, sorry, go.
I'll let Melissa start first, and then I'll come in with mine afterwards.
Well, we'll see if I'm correct in my analysis here, but that could be a So men generally trying to process what they're thinking, and they're not ready to address it or to explain it right away. Whereas we as women, we work through our problems by talking about them. So that in the process of sharing whatever I'm going through with my husband, that's when I will be able to handle it or resolve it myself. And in fact, I think men generally are going to try to listen for the purposes of repairing or fixing a problem. So because I know that, one thing I have to do with my husband is say to him, honey, I'm going to talk to you about a problem I have, and I don't want you to fix it. I just want you to listen and empathize with me. Sit there and listen, and I'll talk through my problem, and I'll figure out my own solution. And he'll say at the end, honey, I'm sorry you're going through that. I'm sure it must be really frustrating or discouraging. If you need help or advice, let me know. And that's where the end of the middle goes happen. But if I don't do that, he will interrupt me and fix my problem.
Mm-hmm. And do you always have to say it again and again, or you just need to say it once? That's what I don't get, like with men, Why? Like if I say it once, why do you have to say it again if it's the same situation?
But, okay, when you initially turned around and you said that about taking time to process, that is absolutely true. If there's, I'd be surprised if there isn't any guys and stuff who are listening to this or watching. They will absolutely agree that sometimes you need that kind of moment to just kind of
but you don't share later either.
But
sometimes
no, but that's the problem. The problem that you're thinking is I'm not sharing it at the time that you particularly need it or want it at that particular time, right? So what you just mentioned there, I'm quite sure that your husband, and please, I don't mean to be too forward and stuff when I'm saying this, but he will probably want to kind of, because he's thinking, if I can help you in your problem, in your issue, then he knows that he's done something. This is the way my mind, he's taken that burden off you. And I don't know whether that actually is, because you never know whether, so if I turn around, I'm saying da da da, doesn't mean that's the answer. It could absolutely be the absolutely incorrect answer. But from his point of view, he's probably sharing what he feels is the logical kind of movement or thing to kind of get to where you're referring to actually kind of reviewing. And I'm always going to be in that. I'm always going to be in that kind of problem solving mode.
Yeah,
it's
but
just who I am.
How I understand it from what Melissa says, he knows this, but he understands that she needs something else. So he is not willing. He's happy to do what she needs.
But then at the same time, sorry, we've gone into counselling and stuff. But at the same time, if you had that initial kind of conversation, and if we're talking about communication, and you do kind of say, oh, actually, just listen. I just need to kind of run this through. You're a sense check and stuff in this. I don't really need your input. I just need you to listen and stuff. I will work this out myself. I'm on the back foot. I'm like, okay, I'm not expected to kind of bring any kind of anything to this apart from being there and just listening to what you need to kind of process and stuff.
But you don't have to understand it. You just need to respect it.
Oh, no. What I'm saying is, if you say that, then I'll get that. But if you don't say that and you automatically kind of assume that I'm going to go into problem solving mode.
Okay.
You are exactly right. And that's what I was trying to say, was that you are wired as a man to fix problems. And so if you aren't told or asked otherwise, you will default to fixing the problem. But what you don't understand as a man, for us as females, is we need to be able to talk through our problems and figure them out ourselves. Now, yes, there are sometimes I need a solution. And if I need a solution, I will not preface my discussion with my husband by saying, I just want you to listen. I'll tell him a problem. He'll give me a solution. We're good to go.
Yeah.
Probably, 50 to 60% of the time. But the other 40% of the time, I need a sounding. I need to talk. And him listening to me and empathizing gives me great value. Whether he feels that or not, it's what I need from him, that situation. So he has provided me what I needed and been willing to adapt how he listens to my needs in that situation. So he's being kind and loving by doing that, even though it's not, he may not feel like he is, or you may not feel like you are. You actually are.
You know what?
Mm-hmm.
If you turn around and you say to me, sounding board, that is fine. That is all I will ever need. And I will just say, I know that you need to process this and you need to kind of run through this to get your resolution.
Okay, that can be our code words.
I love this. Thank you. You saved a lot of pain and things with that. Thank you, Melissa.
I love code words. My husband and I have many of them that way, especially for us. It's because he knows he needs to work on some things, and I nag him. I will not try to manipulate him. But if he tells me, okay, I need to work on this and I want your help. If you see me doing this, remind me I want to be doing this. And I'll say, wait a minute. You need to give me a code phrase, because if I just come to you and I say, remember, you don't want to do this, you want to do this, his personality is such that it almost pushes in the other direction. So I'll come up with a code phrase that might be, the key is exercise, or whatever our code phrase is, and he agrees to it, and then I can say that to him, and he remembers, okay, I agreed to this. I asked her to remind me.
Yeah.
I have my reminder, and so I can't get upset with her for doing it.
That's amazing.
Love that. I'm curious now, because I'm sure you work with many, many clients and people, and what would you say is the most common hurdle that keeps coming up?
That was a really good question, and I'm not sure that I can get down to a specific issue. I do think these gender differences, I think that, as I said, communication is really important. Most of us do not know how to communicate well, especially in conflict. And it's because as we grow up, we usually see one of two styles of conflict management with our parents. It's either going to be your parents got along fairly well, and when they did have conflict, they dealt with it behind closed doors. And so you grew up thinking your parents never fought. Or you have the other extreme where you have parents who fight all the time, and it turns into an all-out brawl, and the children learn that that's how you're supposed to handle conflict. And so we really don't do a good job of teaching our children intentionally how to communicate well in marriage to relationships. And so because of those issues, I think that whole idea of communication and conflict is really a basic one. But ultimately, and one reason why I did a recent masterclass on the 4 thoughts that destroy marriage is that our thinking is what controls everything. If I have problems with my thinking in my marriage, that's going to filter down to my food. And so really working on catching yourself when you start thinking in ways that are not healthy for your marriage. And that's going to take time to correct, because a lot of those ways of thinking are very habitual. One of the ones I discussed in my pastor class was, I know what my spouse is thinking and why he or she did or said it. That's a big problem.
Would you say it's, how important would you say self-reflection is in marriage?
I would say it's very important, but more so yes on self-reflection, but I think it's more important to sit down and reflect on your relationship as a couple. Now that may require that you do self-reflection first, but we can analyze ourselves a lot, but if we never sit down and communicate, again, the truth, what's going on with me? What am I thinking? Where am I frustrated? Where do I understand? If I don't talk about those things with my spouse, then we're just going to both continue to be frustrated. And
I think we're good at communicating most of the time anyway, no? What do you think?
Until we're not.
Until we're not. No, but say when we argue, we let it all out, all the emotions, and then we sit and talk. And that's important. We're just human. Of course, we have these, what you call them? Like
moments.
When we just have to have our say without listening. That's our tantrum. And then when we calm down, we talk. Do you think this is healthy?
If it works for you, then I would say yes. The negative side is that a lot of people have their tantrum, and then that's where it ends. In the process of the tantrum, they have accused, they have belittled, they have hurt their spouse, and so they end up never getting to the point where they actually sit down and talk about it.
Yeah, and this is when people come back to old problems, no, because they never resolve them. So of course, it's always there.
I was going to say that even if we have these discussions or arguments or whatever they are, I don't think that we've ever gone and said anything that was out there I don't ever feel like you've ever said anything to me that I'm like,
yeah, over the top.
Yeah. It's always been more so direct. Yeah, exactly. You could be upset, but still in the back of your mind, you're still kind of remembering that, this is your wife, this is the mother of your kids, and all that and things is still there. And the respect
so far.
Yeah.
Just give it another 10 years.
Yeah, 10 years, we'll see where we go and things, right? But no, I think with just anybody, and this is where you were saying before that maybe I'm too nice and stuff to everyone, but I honestly feel that even in those moments where you're trying to get something across, you still need to have a little bit of kind of composure and respect and stuff for the person that you're speaking to, because if you're not and you're losing it, you've got no chance. Because you've gone, you've totally lost it, and you've gone and you've probably gone on a complete tangent, right? No, I don't think it's ever been.
No, it's mostly when we're not willing to see each other's perspectives.
Yeah.
And I think that's the case not for most couples. When the problem is when they are not willing or capable of seeing the other person's perspective.
Yeah, you're correct. And so the point that you made is really, really important. We were talking about the truth, and that's one of the ways in which the truth is important when it comes to conflict. Not only in the fact that conflict cannot be dealt with if you don't address it, right? So some people plan and they don't share that something is upsetting them. And so then it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. But also being truthful when we communicate during conflict. So if I start using 100% words with my husband and I say, well, you always do this, or you never do this, I'm no longer being truthful, because he procrastinates a lot of the time. He doesn't always procrastinate, right? So I'm using these words to try to make my position stronger, and in doing so, I'm into this character with being dishonest, basically. And so he's going to become defensive. And now the opportunity for us to get beyond those emotions and resolve the conflict has just gone up. So we have to be truthful in looking at what is the actual conflict. There's a little template you can use when you're phrasing conflict called the XYZ method. It's when you said X, when you said or did X in situation Y, I felt B. And this is really important because it's specific to what happened. What was it that you did or you said? Not you're always this, but what did you say in what specific situation? And how did it make me feel? So again, another way we're dishonest is when we blame somebody else for our emotions. Well, our emotions are our own fault. They're our own responsibility. They're not anybody else's. And we have to take ownership for our own emotions. How I perceive your action is my deal. It's not, I can't blame you for that. And if I start blaming you for it, then again, I'm not being honest with myself. So honesty and conflict is extremely important as we're trying to resolve it. And if we are dishonest, we either don't address conflict, or we lie about how we're feeling, or we exaggerate.
Yeah.
I think it works not just the company.
I love this so much, and I have to admit, this is so me.
I didn't say anything. I think we're both on our own little journey and stuff here of self-discovery. So
no, because most of the things that annoy me, and I think that goes for everyone, because it's a neutral action. It don't do anything objectively bad, but it makes me feel certain way. So I then blame you.
Thank you for this, Melissa. I'm enjoying this, and again, this is being recorded, so no.
No, it's really it's such a good point. Yeah. So it's not you, it's me. Sometimes.
But we've all got that. We've all got something and stuff.
No, it's liberating because I prefer it when I'm wrong, to be honest, because it's easier to fix, no, than when someone else is wrong. So you have no power then over it. Whereas when it's you, you have the power. But can I ask you a specific situation? Yeah, I'll see if we share it on the podcast. But say we're outside and we have a baby who has a tantrum, yeah, and I'm stressed because I'm not dealing well with that, and Yaw knows that. And there is someone waving at me and I don't see them, yeah, and he is concerned about that. And he says, "Oh, but you didn't wave to that person." It's like, I'm dealing with a tantrum, and yeah, even in that situation, Yao thinks about someone else and being kind, yeah, because he sees it as rude when we don't say hi back. But from my perspective, like, just everything disappears. If he was stressed, I don't care about anyone else around us, unless they're dying. And that's the biggest difference, I think, between us. Yeah. What would you say? What the right thing to do would be in a situation like that?
Also be, like we talked about at the beginning, of a cultural difference, because some people are raised to be more concerned about the effect on things around them, people around them, as opposed to other cultures are more concerned about like the family group or themselves. So that could be one of those differences, and it could be something that you just have to accept about each other being.
Yeah.
Right.
So there is no one is right, no one is wrong here.
It's strange because I feel in those moments I take you may feel that I don't do this, but this is the way that I'm kind of wired. If I'm quickly saying hi or said hi, that's sorry, I'm putting my thing up there. That's a second in that moment. It's not I've gone off.
No, but I didn't mind you said hi, but you said to me, you didn't say hi while I was dealing with the tantrum.
No, I said, I'll just let you know, Thingy said hi to you. But it's neither here nor there. It's kind of, I feel like I can compartmentalize and stuff in certain situations. And, you know, if something was going crazy, absolutely that's my focus. That's my focus and stuff. But I'm always kind of aware of kind of what's going on and stuff as well. I will not, you know, if you're in a situation where you're upset or something's going on, you're my full focus. But if something happens, if I saw, and this is, sorry, we've really gone into this and things, but if I saw someone fall over or an old man fall over and we are having a moment where you're upset and things, my logical thinking is, okay, you're upset, but that person needs help and stuff at the time. So for the moment, I know you're not appreciating the fact that I'm not focusing on you, but physically and, you know, and knowing that situation, that is more important. I'm not saying it takes anything away from yourself, but that person or that thing needs my attention. If there's someone there and, you know, it's covered, absolutely, you've got my full attention and I've got you. But I'm always aware of my surroundings. I don't feel that it takes away. Having that second to see what's kind of going on doesn't take away my concentration from what I feel that you need. I may need to understand that better.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. And like Melissa said, and this is very, very good information for me and for us, that it's understanding the cultural blah blah differences and respect them. And I think this is huge what you said there, Melissa, because it's very liberating for me to know there's no one right, no one is wrong. It's just very different in that respect, and just have to accept it. Because to me, like if you're upset and I see a man falling down, my thinking would be, I'm sure someone else will help him. Now, Yao is important to me. See, that's the difference.
See, to me, I would understand if you had to help that person, because I'd be like, okay, I put my stuff to one moment. You know, there's nothing happening to me.
And that was something else I was going to point out was the, and it kind of relates to this, is sometimes we're afraid to agree to disagree. You know, we kind of think, well, we have to agree about everything. Well, no, we don't. We might be married, but we're still two different people. The things where we need to agree are the things that affect our lives, and you know, our beliefs, how you raise your children, how you spend money, and even those, there can be differences. But if you can work through those through communication, then you can still continue to have a healthy relationship.
I love this, because I think lots of people, and it's the ego thing probably, they feel like they have to be right. But I understand, because I'm a human as well. I have ego.
I don't think I do I have that?
No.
Okay.
You're perfect.
Wow.
No.
So let's know about this masterclass, because I think we may need to join.
Okay. Well, let me tell you about two things. So first of all, present for your listeners. The masterclass that I already did that's free is called 4 Thoughts That Will Destroy Your Marriage and How to Overcome Them. You can access it by going to my website, which is the Communication Doc. It's thecommunicationdoc.com. And when you get to the main page, you'll see a link right at the top that says free masterclass. You click on that, it's going to ask you for some information and then give you direct access to the class. And then the one that I'm going to be working on for the mini series regarding the truth, which will come up probably in the next month. If you join the masterclass, that'll put you on my email list, and then you'll get notifications from the mini series and the courses of it. The signature program I have as part of my business, which is called the Communication Doc. And the reason for that, some people may not understand, but because I've taught college for so many years, a lot of times my students will call me Dr. Cancel. And a lot of them, instead of continuing to be so friendly, would start calling me Doc. So it's a play on words in that it reminds me of my students and the value that I can bring to my students, as well as the fact that I have a PhD. But my goal or my signature program is called Get Communication There. And it's a 16-week group coaching and training program. Now, some people might hear group coaching and think, oh my goodness, we have to talk about things in a group. But you guys are talking about things in your marriage on a podcast that everybody's going to hear. So what I'm doing is not therapy. We're not going to dig into the deep, dark roots of your past. What I'm doing is training people on how to communicate well in their marriage. So teaching them how to understand each other better, especially across those gender differences, how to communicate well, how to manage conflict effectively, and then how to keep connection in your marriage. And one session a week will be training, and then one session a week is coaching, where I help you practically apply the skills. Now, I understand that I'm not going to necessarily fix every problem in every person's marriage. So I also include some individual coaching sessions in my program that I can work on individual problems. But the reason I chose the length of the program is because we can't fix our communication marriage issues in a week or 2 weeks or in a weekend or a seminar. We really need time and help to keep working on fixing those issues. And so anybody who might be interested in joining my program, you can do all of that from the website, which I already mentioned, communication.com.
We highly recommend as well, because as you could hear now during the hour, we had so many insights, and already I feel some shifts and liberation. So yeah, if you are married, and I think everyone needs this now, if you're married, we all have issues. And like you said at the beginning, I like that, what you said about the idea of happily ever after. And I think this is one of the problems that is such unrealistic expectations now about marriage. And we see that in the media, they live happily ever after, as if wedding was the final destination, but it's just the freaking start. Do you agree that the expectations are just so unrealistic?
Yes, I agree completely. And that's one of those ways we really have to correct our thinking about marriage, because if you expect it to be happily ever after, then when you start having problems and it's not, or you get to the point in your marriage where you're really pretty miserable and you think that maybe it's something wrong with you, that you can't have a happily ever after that everybody else is, and the reality is it's not happily ever after for anybody. It's not.
Yeah.
But it is possible for you to have a healthy marriage if you communicate well, handle conflict, all these things that we've been talking about.
Yeah, all of that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Melissa. It's been absolute pleasure to have you on. And I'm not as annoyed with you now, which is great. Yeah, I mean,
that's a first. That's a first. So we're on the right road. I just need to understand you a bit more.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. It's a journey, isn't it? So we'll leave all the links in the description for our listeners. And thank you so much for being here and for sharing your wisdom with us. It's been really insightful for both of us, and I hope for our listeners as well. And if you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review. I know I sound like a broken record. It really does help to get this podcast discovered. So if you enjoy this, it would mean the world if you let us a review. Right, Yaw? Say yes.
Yes.
Thanks so much.
Communication's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you need to know when to stop talking as well.
Okay. Sorry. Yes, love.
Thank you so much, and see you in 2 weeks.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye.